And we're talking about teenagers here getting involved in this gender ideology. There's a recent case out of the US in Indiana where a child, a boy, who said that he felt like a girl, and his parents said to him that in accordance with their Catholic beliefs, they didn't believe he could change his gender. This obviously got back to the authorities, and the authorities in Indiana actually came along and took the child away from the parents while they conducted an investigation, quote unquote, into what had been going on. Now, this investigation ultimately found that the parents hadn't actually abused or harmed their child in any way, but that did not stop the state taking the child away while this quote unquote investigation was going on. They're now running a legal case against the state saying, why did you take my child away from me? Their assessment was that their son had mental health issues, he had a pre-existing eating disorder, and that they wanted him to be treated for his mental health issues. When he was taken away and put in another person's care, foster care, a supposedly gender-affirming home, his eating disorder actually got worse, which surely is proof that taking him away from his parents was the worst thing they could have done. His mental health deteriorated further after that point, but they will go to any length to reinforce their ideology above those of the parents.
This demonstrates the conundrum that parents now have. So you've got your son who comes to you and says, I think I'm a girl. And on top of that, you know they've got mental health issues and an eating disorder. So as a parent, you think, gee, I need to get help for my son. So you take him to a professional, only for a professional or someone else to then report you to authorities that you are causing distress because you're not affirming your child's gender identity. Next thing you know, you've got the state knocking on your door, removing your child. And for the period that that child was absent from the parents were allowed to visit their son for a few hours a week, but were specifically banned from talking about their religious stance. And bear in mind, their religious stance, not some weird fringe cult.
They're Catholics.
They're Catholics. You know, huge numbers of people are Catholics. They weren't allowed to mention what the Bible says about sexuality or gender. That was strictly forbidden during their hour-long visitations with their own son.
And then zoom out again and just consider the fact we are talking about the state taking your child off you because you won't bend the knee to the propaganda that they are pumping through their educational systems, whether that's uni or school. It's in the health systems. These days, you can't even go to a health appointment without being like, oh, you male, female or other. And we know through our own health system here in Australia, it's not something that you can assume anymore, even if someone's plainly male or female and you're there in a medical capacity, and it could mean life or death in some instances. No, you can't assume, you must ask. So they are pumping this propaganda. It's all over social media, which we know no kid these days aren't awash with as well. And then when the kid becomes a victim of that propaganda that they've been subjected to, we take your child off you. Right. You're not fit to be a parent. This is your fault. Right. It is utterly terrifying, and parents these days have got their work cut out for them, because whether it's a book in your kid's school, which you may or may not know about, whether it's a teacher that's telling them things that honestly is just hair-raising. No one wants to use the G word of grooming, but these kids are being converted into a particular way of thinking, a particular lifestyle. And then the fact that the state can turn around and just be like, how dare you? How dare you disagree with what we're pumping through every system we've got our paws in? This kid's ours now.
And the overall impact on children's mental health deteriorates because we've had psychologists and therapists in Victoria and Queensland say that because of the anti-gay conversion laws, they are now reluctant to even consult with children in case that child identifies as a different gender, and then they are duty-bound to affirm no matter what other mental conditions there might be. So we've talked about New South Wales, we've talked about the US, but of course this is all around the Western world right now. In the UK, biological men in the military who start identifying as women are now able to sleep in the women's quarters according to official government guidelines. The guidelines now state that the determining factor as to where somebody sleeps in the military is the gender by which they personally identify. I don't know how this possibly helps the UK military, which, let's face it, have their hands full at the moment. They've got an aggressive Russia in Europe. We know about China in the South Pacific. They've got all sorts of problems. They had a nuclear missile test that failed miserably yesterday. And on top of that, they can't get enough recruits. Well, no wonder. Would you sign up for the military if you're a woman, knowing that you'll have biological men sleeping in your dorm?
Indeed, and I suspect it's probably difficult enough to be a woman in the military as it is, with things as they are at the moment. I mean, we talk about the fact, and we talked about this last week, because it's not just the UK that I assume is struggling to get soldiers, and particularly here in Australia, we can't get anyone for the Navy, right? When you degrade the culture to the point that you feel like there is nothing left to defend, why would you want to sign up to the military? And this is a symptom of that. Not only has the culture been debased broadly amongst society, it has been debased amongst the outfit that is designed to defend that culture. When the military is more worried about pronouns and whether or not people can sleep in certain quarters, you know that it has lost all meaning. And so if you were a person who actually wants to defend your country and defend your culture, you would look at that and go, well, why would I want to be part of an outfit like that? And everyone else doesn't want to be a part of an outfit like that anyway because they don't think there's anything left to defend.
And it just tells women, you're not safe anywhere. Join the army, try to go to a bathroom or a change room. Sporting field, nope, sorry, you're not safe there either. We have literally run out of spaces in which they are genuinely women's only spaces, because we've reached a point now where no organisation, no sporting body whatsoever, it seems, has the strength to put its head up over the parapet and say, look, no, we're not allowing biological men in the women's sauna, in the women's gym, in the women's fill in the blank. It's just not happening anymore. Nobody is drawing a line in the sand. Check out this headline in the Daily Mail recently. Army sparks feminist backlash after first transgender soldier to serve on the front line takes part in panel discussion about women in leadership at Sandhurst event. For crying out loud. So not only do you just get to be women overnight, but now you're women in leadership. You're telling other women, oh, this is how we do leadership. Women, follow my lead. For crying out loud. You are not a woman in leadership, and you certainly shouldn't be lecturing other actual women about how to lead. But once again, nobody would draw the line in the sand.
But you want to know the crazy thing about that particular warrant officer who is now head of diversity and inclusion in the British military? But warrant officer Deborah Penny, his entire service in the military was as a male before he started identifying as a female. So then, having served in the military as a male, then he went and lectured on what it's like to be a woman on the front lines.
Of course,
it makes less and less sense the more you look at it, Caleb.
Good career move, though, probably. You know, you've guaranteed a future career, but it's just every time you look at one of these things, and I mean, we could do an entire show on it every single night if we really wanted to. There are so many of these things come up. But we have to keep talking about it. Like, I know it feels after a while, oh my God, we're just going through the same mines again. But it's a war of attrition, right? Like, if we get to the point where we feel like we've had enough of talking about this because it's the same crap, different day, that's how they start to get a hold of you. Because you back down and go, I'm just sick of doing anything about it anymore. And then they're just straight over the top of you.
Because every capitulation to the left emboldens it, which is why we cannot rest, we cannot sleep, we can't stop yabbering on about it, because they're certainly not.